My sister Rebecca demanded I cancel my engagement and postpone my wedding until 2027 because she claimed 2026 was her year. She enlisted our father and stepmother to pressure me financially and emotionally, turning family gatherings into battlegrounds. And she escalated to sabotaging my wedding vendors and spreading lies about my fiancé. I realized this wasn't about wedding dates, it was about control. So I decided to give her exactly the kind of attention she was craving, just not the way she expected. Hey viewers, welcome to the channel. We are just starting and your support means a lot. If you enjoy these stories, please consider subscribing and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. My name is Daniel, I'm 29, and I just watched my family implode over something as ridiculous as wedding dates. This story isn't really about weddings, it's about control, manipulation, and how far some people will go to make everything about them. Let me start from the beginning because this whole mess has been building for months. I proposed to my fiancée, Sarah Chen, who's 27 and works as a pediatric nurse, last October. We'd been together for 3 years, living together for 2, and we both knew we wanted to spend our lives together. The proposal was simple and private, just the two of us on a hiking trail where we'd had our first date. It was perfect, exactly what we both wanted. When I told my family about our engagement, most of them were thrilled. My mom, Linda, who's 54 and divorced from my dad, cried happy tears and immediately started talking about how excited she was to gain another daughter. My older sisters, Amanda and Jennifer, who are 32 and 33 respectively, were genuinely happy for us. They both got married in 2019, just 3 months apart, and they understood that love doesn't wait for convenient timing. But my sister Rebecca, who's 30 and works in marketing, had a very different reaction. Rebecca got engaged to her boyfriend Trevor Williams, who's 31 and works in finance, on Christmas Day last year. She'd been planning this elaborate proposal for months, complete with professional photographers and a whole social media campaign. Her engagement photos went viral in our local community, and she'd been basking in the attention ever since. When I told her about my engagement to Sarah, her face went completely cold. She didn't congratulate me. She didn't ask to see the ring. Instead, she said, "You can't be engaged right now. My wedding isn't until July. This is my year." I thought she was joking at first, but she was dead serious. She explained that she'd been engaged for 10 months already, that she'd been planning her wedding for almost a year, and that having another engagement in the family would steal her thunder. She said I should have waited until after her wedding to propose, and that my wedding couldn't happen until 2027 because 2026 was her year. I tried to reason with her. I explained that Sarah and I were planning a small, intimate wedding for the last Saturday in November, almost 5 months after her July wedding. We were only inviting about 25 people, mostly immediate family and close friends. Rebecca was planning a 300-person extravaganza with multiple venues, a destination bachelorette party, and a week-long honeymoon in Europe. Our weddings couldn't be more different, but Rebecca wasn't interested in logic. She was furious that I'd ruined her engagement year and demanded that I either break up with Sarah or wait until 2027 to get married. She said that having 2 weddings in the same year would confuse people and make her wedding seem less special. This is where things get really ugly. Rebecca enlisted our father, Michael, who's 56 and remarried to his wife, Carol, who's 52. Dad has always had a soft spot for Rebecca. She's his youngest daughter and the one who looks most like him. Carol, who's been my stepmother for 8 years, has always resented my mom and, by extension, me and my sisters from my dad's first marriage. Dad called me a week after I told Rebecca about my engagement. He said he'd been thinking about it, and he agreed with Rebecca that I should wait until after her wedding to get married. He said it was a matter of family respect and proper timing. When I told him that Sarah and I had already started planning our November wedding, he threatened to withhold the money he'd promised to contribute. Here's the thing, I'd never asked my dad for money for my wedding. Sarah and I are both working professionals who have been saving for this. We didn't need his financial help, and we definitely didn't want it to come with strings attached. But the fact that he was trying to use money to control my life decisions told me everything I needed to know about his priorities. Carol was even worse. She started making passive-aggressive comments about how some people don't understand family dynamics and how Rebecca deserves to have her special time without competition. She'd make these comments at family dinners in front of everyone, clearly trying to make me feel guilty for being engaged. The real harassment started in January. Rebecca began a campaign to pressure me into postponing my wedding that was both sophisticated and cruel. She'd call me multiple times a week, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, always insisting that I was ruining her wedding year. send me screenshots of wedding planning articles about spacing family weddings appropriately and avoiding family drama through proper timing. She enlisted our aunts and uncles, telling them that I was being selfish and inconsiderate. She'd call them crying, saying that her little brother was trying to upstage her wedding and that she was devastated. Some of them actually believed her and started pressuring me to reconsider. But the worst part was how she treated Sarah. Rebecca started making subtle comments about how Sarah was clearly the one pushing for a quick wedding and how she was probably trying to get pregnant before marriage. She'd make these comments in front of other family members, always with a sweet smile, as if she was just expressing innocent concern. Sarah, who's one of the kindest people I've ever met, was devastated. She'd grown up in a close-knit family where everyone supported each other's happiness. She couldn't understand why Rebecca was being so cruel, and she started blaming herself for the family drama. In March, Rebecca escalated her campaign. She started calling vendors that Sarah and I had hired, claiming to be Sarah's maid of honor and saying that we needed to cancel our services because we were postponing the wedding due to family illness. She managed to get our florist and our photographer to cancel our contracts before we caught on to what she was doing. When I confronted Rebecca about this, she denied it at first, then admitted it but said she was just trying to help us avoid making a mistake. She said that once we came to our senses and postponed the wedding, we'd thank her for protecting our vendor relationships. That's when I realized this wasn't about wedding dates or family timing. This was about control. Rebecca couldn't stand that she wasn't the center of attention, that someone else in the family was experiencing joy and celebration. She needed to be the only bride, the only person getting married, the only one receiving congratulations and well wishes. I started documenting everything. I saved all her text messages, her voicemails, her emails. I took screenshots of her social media posts where she'd make passive-aggressive comments about family members who don't understand boundaries. I kept records of every vendor she'd called, every family member she'd tried to turn against me. Sarah and I decided we weren't going to let Rebecca's behavior derail our wedding plans. We rehired vendors, we sent out save the dates, and we continued planning our November wedding. We also decided we weren't going to engage with Rebecca's drama anymore. We'd be polite but distant, and we wouldn't discuss our wedding plans with anyone who might report back to her. But Rebecca wasn't done. In May, she started spreading rumors that Sarah and I were having relationship problems. She'd tell family members that we were fighting constantly and that the wedding was probably going to be called off anyway. She'd say this with fake concern, as if she was worried about us, but it was clear she was hoping to create a self-fulfilling prophecy. The breaking point came in June, just a month before Rebecca's wedding. She called a family meeting and invited everyone except me and Sarah. She told them that she was deeply hurt by my refusal to postpone my wedding and that she was considering uninviting me from her wedding because my selfishness was causing her too much stress. My mom, who'd been trying to stay neutral, finally had enough. She called me after the meeting and told me exactly what Rebecca had said. She said that Rebecca had been crying and dramatic, claiming that I was ruining the most important day of her life and that she couldn't enjoy her engagement because I was stealing her spotlight. Mom told me that she'd stood up for me at the meeting, saying that Rebecca was being unreasonable and that there was nothing wrong with two siblings getting married in the same year. But Dad and Carol had supported Rebecca, and several other family members had agreed that I should consider postponing. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I'd been patient, I'd been understanding, I'd tried to compromise. But Rebecca had crossed too many lines, and she was now actively trying to destroy my relationship and turn my family against me. I spent the next few weeks preparing my response. I organized all the evidence I'd been collecting, the text messages, the voicemails, the vendor confirmations showing that Rebecca had called them pretending to be Sarah's maid of honor. I also gathered evidence of her social media campaign, her attempts to manipulate family members, and her lies about Sarah and me having relationship problems. Rebecca's engagement party was last night. It was supposed to be this elegant affair at an upscale restaurant with about 60 people in attendance. Rebecca had been planning it for months, talking about how it would be the perfect preview of her wedding. I attended the party with Sarah, and we were polite and congratulatory. We brought an expensive gift, we mingled with the other guests, and we played the part of the happy, supportive siblings. Rebecca seemed pleased that we were there, probably thinking that our presence meant we'd given in to her demands. But during the toasts, I asked if I could say a few words about my sister. Rebecca beamed, probably expecting me to announce that Sarah and I were postponing our wedding or that we'd realized she was right all along. Instead, I gave a speech about family relationships and the importance of supporting each other through life's big moments. I talked about how lucky I felt to have sisters who'd always been there for me, how Amanda and Jennifer had shown me what sisterly love looked like when they both got married in 2019 just 3 months apart and celebrated each other's happiness. And I said, which is why I'm so confused about Rebecca's reaction to my engagement to Sarah. For those of you who don't know, Rebecca has been pressuring me for months to cancel my engagement and postpone my wedding until 2027 because she says 2026 is her year. Called my vendors pretending to be Sarah's maid of honor to cancel our contracts. She spread rumors about Sarah and me having relationship problems. She's turned family gatherings into battlegrounds where she demands that everyone choose sides. The room went completely silent. Rebecca's face went from beaming to horrified in about 2 seconds. Trevor looked confused and embarrassed. Dad and Carol looked furious, but not at me, at Rebecca for putting them in this position. I continued, I have recordings of Rebecca calling me crying, demanding that I break up with Sarah rather than get married in the same year as her. I have screenshots of her social media posts where she makes passive-aggressive comments about family members who don't understand boundaries. I have confirmation emails from vendors showing that she called them pretending to be part of our wedding party. I pulled out my phone and played one of Rebecca's voicemails, where she was sobbing and saying that I was destroying her dreams and that she couldn't be happy as long as I was engaged. Recording made it clear that this wasn't about legitimate family concerns. It was about Rebecca's inability to share attention. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Several people looked shocked, others looked embarrassed for Rebecca. Trevor looked like he wanted to disappear. Dad and Carol looked mortified. I finished by saying, Sarah and I are getting married on November 30th, and we'd love to have the family members who can support our happiness there with us. We're not going to continue participating in drama or manipulation, and we're not going to let anyone hold our joy hostage. Then Sarah and I left the party. We didn't wait for Rebecca's response. We didn't engage with the family members who wanted to discuss what I'd said, and we didn't stick around for the aftermath. But the aftermath found us anyway. My phone started blowing up within an hour. Rebecca sent me about 15 text messages, ranging from furious to heartbroken to threatening. She said I'd destroyed her engagement party, and that she'd never forgive me for humiliating her in front of everyone. Dad called me, screaming about how I'd embarrassed the family and how I'd ruined Rebecca's special night. He said I was selfish and cruel and that I should have handled this privately. I pointed out that I'd tried to handle it privately for months, and that Rebecca had been the one to make it public by involving the entire extended family. Carol left me a voicemail saying that I was just like my mother and that I'd always been jealous of Rebecca's success. She said that Sarah was clearly a bad influence and that I should think carefully about whether I wanted to marry someone who would come between family. But I also got messages of support. My mom called me, proud of me for standing up for myself and Sarah. Amanda and Jennifer both texted me, saying they'd always thought Rebecca was being unreasonable and that they were glad I'd finally called her out. Several cousins and family friends reached out, saying they'd been uncomfortable with Rebecca's behavior but hadn't known how to address it. The most telling response came from Trevor. He texted me this morning, saying that he'd had no idea Rebecca had been sabotaging my wedding vendors or spreading rumors about my relationship. He said he was reconsidering some things, and that he hoped Sarah and I would be happy together. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Rebecca's wedding next month. She might uninvite me, which would honestly be a relief at this point. She might try to escalate the family drama, which I'm prepared for. Or she might realize that her behavior has been unreasonable and try to make amends, which I'd be open to if she's genuinely sorry. But regardless of what happens with Rebecca, I know I made the right choice. I protected my relationship with Sarah, I stood up for myself, and I refused to let someone else's need for control dictate my life decisions. Sarah and I are still getting married on November 30th. We're still planning the intimate, joyful celebration we've always wanted. We're doing it surrounded by the people who genuinely care about our happiness, not the people who want to use our joy as a weapon in their own drama. The last 6 months have taught me a lot about family dynamics, about boundaries, and about the difference between people who love you and people who want to control you. Rebecca may be my sister, but she's also someone who was willing to sabotage my happiness for her own ego. That's not love, that's narcissism. I'm sad that it came to this. I'm sad that Rebecca's need for attention has damaged our relationship, probably permanently. I'm sad that my dad chose to enable her behavior rather than call her out on it. I'm sad that what should have been a joyful time for both of us turned into months of conflict and manipulation, but I'm also relieved. I'm relieved that I don't have to walk on eggshells around Rebecca anymore. I'm relieved that Sarah and I can plan our wedding without worrying about sabotage. I'm relieved that the family members who matter most are supporting us. Most importantly, I'm excited about marrying Sarah. She's been incredible through all of this drama, patient and supportive even when Rebecca was attacking her personally. She's shown me what real love looks like, not the conditional, controlling kind that Rebecca offers, but the kind that supports your partner even when it's difficult. In 5 months, Sarah and I will be married. We'll have a beautiful, intimate wedding surrounded by people who celebrate our love rather than resent it. And Rebecca will have learned that her tantrums and manipulation don't get to dictate other people's lives. The wedding war is over, and the right side won.